first sounds that I have to make, will it be there? I was talking about it just the other night at Carnegie Hall at the Irving Berlin thing.
When people think of Frank Sinatra, they usually picture one of the greatest singers who ever lived. His unmistakable voice helped define 20th century music, and countless artists spent decades trying to capture even a fraction of the magic he brought to the stage. Songs like My Way, New York, New York, and I've Got You Under My Skin turned him into a global icon whose influence stretched far beyond the world of entertainment. But behind the polished image of the chairman of the board was a life filled with hardship, controversy, and painful experiences that many fans rarely hear about. So today, we're taking a closer look at the dark details about Frank Sinatra that most people choose to ignore. Ironically, Frank Sinatra's remarkable story almost ended before it had even begun.
It's real nice having you with us for the holidays.
I couldn't think of any better place to be.
Oh, hey, how about an eggnog?
Francis Albert Sinatra was born on December 12, 1915, in the kitchen of his parents' apartment in Hoboken, New Jersey. His birth was anything but ordinary. Weighing an astonishing 13.5 pounds, he was far larger than most newborns of the era, and the difficult delivery quickly became life-threatening. Doctors were forced to use forceps to pull him from the womb, but when he finally emerged, he was blue, motionless, and not breathing. For a terrifying moment, it appeared that the baby who would one day captivate millions had been born dead. As the doctor focused his attention on Frank's exhausted mother, his grandmother refused to give up hope. Thinking quickly, she carried the newborn to a sink, ran cold water over his tiny body, and repeatedly slapped him on the back. Suddenly, he gasped for air. Against all expectations, the child survived. It was an extraordinary beginning to a life that would later become one of the most celebrated in entertainment history. But that traumatic birth left permanent reminders that Frank would carry forever. The forceps severely damaged the left side of his face, neck, and jaw, leaving noticeable scars that never completely disappeared. Throughout much of his career, critics cruelly nicknamed him Scarface, a label that deeply embarrassed him. To hide the marks, Sinatra often relied on thick stage makeup and carefully planned lighting whenever he appeared in public. Few fans realized that beneath his smooth appearance were scars he had been trying to conceal since the day he was born. Even his famous name came about by accident. His parents had originally intended to name him Martin after his father, but during his baptism, a misunderstanding led the priest to record him as Francis, honoring his godfather, Frank Garrick, instead.
I said, even just going out and looking at the audience, I was terrified for about 4 seconds.
The mistake was never corrected, and the name Frank Sinatra became one of the most recognizable names in entertainment history. Frank was the only child of Italian immigrant parents whose lives were anything but ordinary. His father, Marty Sinatra, owned a neighborhood tavern while also working as a part-time prize fighter, earning a reputation as a tough, hard-working man. His mother, Dolly Sinatra, was equally formidable. She worked as a midwife, secretly helping women obtain illegal abortions at a time when doing so carried enormous personal risk. Beyond that, she was deeply involved in local politics and was known throughout Hoboken as a woman with influence, determination, and powerful connections. Because both parents spent so much of their time working, young Frank often found himself alone or under the care of his grandmother. He grew up wishing he had brothers or sisters to keep him company. Most of the children in his heavily Italian neighborhood belonged to large, lively families, while Frank returned each day to a much quieter home. That loneliness would stay with him throughout much of his childhood. From an early age, Frank dreamed of becoming something bigger than the life he saw around him. But the road to success was anything but smooth. His father believed singing was an unreliable profession and wanted his son to find a stable, respectable job instead. Dolly, however, gradually became her son's biggest supporter. She bought him sheet music, helped pay for sound equipment, encouraged his passion, and even used her political influence to introduce him to people who could offer valuable opportunities.
I don't want to drive home and get picked up for driving with too much cinnamon, you know. Influence of cinnamon.
It was Dolly who ultimately helped Frank secure a place in a local vocal group called the Hoboken Four, a decision that would completely change the course of his life. The group gave him his first real taste of performing, but it quickly became obvious that one member stood apart from the rest. While the others enjoyed singing as a hobby, Frank viewed every rehearsal and every performance as another step towards something much bigger. His relentless ambition, unmatched work ethic, and unwavering belief in his own potential made it clear that the Hoboken Four was only the beginning of a journey that would soon transform him into one of the biggest stars the world had ever known. After the Hoboken Four eventually disbanded, Frank Sinatra found himself back where many struggling performers began. He waited tables to pay the bills while singing whenever local dance bands needed a vocalist. It wasn't glamorous work, but every small performance gave him another chance to sharpen his craft. He believed that one opportunity could change everything, and he was willing to wait for it no matter how long it took. That opportunity finally arrived in 1940 when legendary band leader Tommy Dorsey offered Sinatra a contract to become the featured singer in his orchestra. It was the breakthrough Frank had been dreaming about.
And then it goes away.
How do you explain that?
I don't know. I can't explain.
You've always had that.
Always had it. I
Harry
think
James, when you stood up to sing with the Harry James?
Every always had it all the time.
Dorsey's orchestra was one of the biggest acts in America, and performing night after night before massive audiences transformed the young singer into a rising national star. Within just 2 years, Sinatra's popularity had become so overwhelming that many fans were attending concerts just to see him. By 1942, he decided it was time to leave Dorsey behind and launch a solo career, convinced that he no longer needed the security of a famous band to succeed. Long before Sinatra became a household name, however, he had someone he admired above everyone else. That person was Bing Crosby. Sinatra openly credited Crosby as his greatest musical inspiration, studying his relaxed phrasing, effortless delivery, and conversational singing style. Instead of sounding theatrical, Crosby made every lyric feel personal, and Frank built much of his own style around that approach. The two men first crossed paths briefly in 1935 at a nightclub, but at the time, Sinatra was simply another unknown singer hoping for a lucky break. Nearly a decade passed before they met again, and by then, everything had changed.
Do you think your boiling point is low? Not anymore. It used to be.
Although Crosby remained one of America's biggest entertainers throughout the 1940s, Sinatra had become something entirely different. He inspired an almost unbelievable level of fan devotion. Thousands of teenage girls screamed, fainted, and chased him wherever he appeared, creating scenes that many historians describe as the first true wave of modern pop star hysteria. Crosby famously joked about the younger singer's success, saying Sinatra was the kind of performer who came along once in a lifetime, then adding, "Why did it have to be during my lifetime?" The line was humorous, but it also helped fuel one of the entertainment industry's most talked about rivalries. Newspapers loved comparing the two stars, and both occasionally traded playful insults in interviews. Much of the competition was exaggerated by the media because it generated headlines, and as the years passed, any genuine tension largely disappeared. Eventually, the two singers shared the screen together and even performed duets, appearing in productions such as High Society, proving that the rivalry had become more legend than reality. While Sinatra's public image centered on music and Hollywood glamour, another side of his life generated whispers that followed him for decades. For years, rumors linked Frank Sinatra to some of the most powerful organized crime figures in America. Although he consistently denied having any criminal involvement, his friendships attracted enormous attention from law enforcement. He was frequently associated with Chicago mob boss Sam Giancana and was often seen socializing with the Fischetti brothers, who controlled illegal gambling operations.
And you climb down the chimney and come in through the fireplace and surprise everybody.
What's a surprise? I do that every night.
He also maintained relationships with Detroit mob figures Anthony and Vito Giacalone. Stories circulated that whenever Sinatra found himself trapped in a difficult business contract or felt someone had publicly disrespected him, intimidating visitors sometimes appeared to handle the situation. None of those stories ever resulted in criminal charges against Sinatra himself, but they added to his growing reputation as a man with powerful friends. The FBI closely monitored many of these relationships for years, compiling an enormous file on the singer. Although investigators never successfully prosecuted him for organized crime activity, much of the Bureau's documentation became public after his death, revealing just how closely federal agents had followed nearly every aspect of his private life. If you're enjoying the video so far, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and stick around because there's much more about Frank Sinatra that most people never hear. One of Sinatra's closest friendships also connected him directly to the highest levels of American politics. Frank was an enthusiastic supporter of the Democratic Party, particularly John F. Kennedy during his presidential campaign. While it's unclear exactly how the two men first became friends, the connection was strengthened through Rat Pack member Peter Lawford, who had married Kennedy's sister, Patricia "Pat" Kennedy. When JFK announced his campaign for president, Sinatra threw himself into helping however he could. He loaned campaign staff his private jet, allowed his song High Hopes to become the campaign anthem, hosted expensive fundraising dinners, and even appeared in political radio advertisements encouraging Americans to vote for Kennedy.
I think that comes with a normal growing up and the way of living, friends, people with whom you become acquainted.
Some historians have also suggested that Joseph Kennedy believed Sinatra's relationships with labor unions and organized crime figures could help generate additional political support in key states. Whether that influence actually existed remains heavily debated, but the rumors only deepened Sinatra's already controversial reputation. Not long after Kennedy entered the White House, however, the friendship began to unravel. Wiretap recordings reportedly suggested that Sinatra had become romantically involved with Pat Kennedy despite her being married. The same recordings allegedly implied that Sinatra hoped to use that relationship to influence members of the Kennedy family and encourage the administration to ease pressure on some of his mob-connected acquaintances. Whether every allegation was accurate remains disputed, but the relationship between Sinatra and the Kennedy family quickly deteriorated, ending what had once appeared to be one of Hollywood's most powerful political alliances. Away from politics, Sinatra had another reputation that was far more difficult to deny. Despite singing some of the most romantic songs ever recorded, Frank Sinatra possessed an explosive temper that became legendary throughout the entertainment industry. Friends, employees, and journalists all described moments when even minor frustrations could trigger extraordinary outbursts. During one performance in Hong Kong, a lighting mistake reportedly sent Sinatra into such a rage that he destroyed both his dressing room and his luxury hotel suite, smashing valuable antiques in the process. On another occasion, he allegedly drove a golf cart directly through the window of a shopping mall after losing his temper. Those closest to the entertainment business also claimed Sinatra could be intimidating toward venue employees and performers he disliked. Several comedians later recalled frightening encounters connected to the singer. Comic Shecky Greene reportedly angered Sinatra and was later confronted by men believed to be associated with organized crime. Jackie Mason experienced an even more disturbing situation after repeatedly joking about the nearly 30-year age difference between Sinatra and his young wife, Mia Farrow. Mason refused to stop making the jokes. Not long afterward, gunshots were reportedly fired into his hotel room, and he later suffered a violent assault that left him with a broken nose and fractured cheekbone. Although Sinatra was never convicted of ordering any attacks, stories like these only reinforced the aura of fear that surrounded his name. His private relationships were often just as turbulent as his public feuds. Frank Sinatra was married 4 times, and many biographers describe his marriages as passionate, complicated, and frequently marked by jealousy and infidelity. His first wife, Nancy Barbato, gave birth to their 3 children, Nancy, Frank Jr., and Tina. But Sinatra's repeated affairs eventually destroyed the marriage, leading to divorce. Soon afterward, he married actress Ava Gardner, creating one of Hollywood's most famous and volatile romances. Their relationship was filled with public arguments, heavy drinking, and mutual infidelity. The emotional highs were intense, but so were the lows, and after 6 turbulent years, the marriage came to an end. His third marriage attracted even more headlines. Sinatra married actress Mia Farrow, who was nearly 30 years younger than he was. According to numerous accounts, he expected her to abandon her acting career and devote herself entirely to being his wife. At first, Farrow agreed. But as time passed, she became increasingly unhappy living the life of a full-time housewife. Eventually, she decided to return to acting by accepting the starring role in Rosemary's Baby, a decision that would place enormous strain on their already fragile marriage and set the stage for yet another painful chapter in Frank Sinatra's complicated personal life. Frank Sinatra was furious when Mia Farrow accepted the lead role in Rosemary's Baby. He expected his wife to put their marriage ahead of her career, while Farrow believed she could do both. The disagreement quickly turned into one of the most public and painful breakups in Hollywood. In November 1967, while Farrow was on the film set working under director Roman Polanski, Sinatra had divorce papers delivered directly to her. Cast and crew watched in disbelief as a legal messenger handed the documents to the 22-year-old actress between scenes. It was a cold, humiliating moment that instantly made headlines around the world. Farrow later admitted she was heartbroken, while Sinatra showed little interest in repairing the relationship. Their marriage had lasted just over 2 years. Not long after, Sinatra married for a 4th and final time. In 1976, he wed Barbara Marx, a former model and the ex-wife of comedian Zeppo Marx. Unlike his previous marriages, this one proved remarkably stable. Barbara understood the demands of Sinatra's celebrity life better than anyone before her, and despite occasional rumors and disagreements, the couple remained together until Frank's death more than 2 decades later. But while his 4th marriage brought some stability, Sinatra's relationship with alcohol continued to cast a shadow over his private life. Friends, musicians, and longtime associates often described Frank as someone who rarely went anywhere without a drink close by. Jack Daniel's whiskey became almost synonymous with his public image. Whether he was performing in Las Vegas, entertaining guests at home, or relaxing after a concert, a glass was rarely far from his hand. Although he maintained an extraordinary work ethic, there were periods when heavy drinking fueled unpredictable mood swings, arguments, and reckless behavior. Several people close to Sinatra claimed that alcohol often intensified his already explosive temper. Small disagreements could quickly escalate into shouting matches, broken furniture, or friendships that ended almost overnight. Yet just as quickly as he could explode, Sinatra was also known to apologize, buy extravagant gifts, or quietly help the very people he had argued with only days earlier. It was a contradiction that followed him throughout his life. His generosity became almost as legendary as his anger. Behind the scenes, Sinatra quietly gave away millions of dollars without seeking publicity. He frequently paid medical bills for friends, covered funeral expenses for struggling entertainers, and anonymously helped families who had fallen on hard times. Countless stories emerged after his death from people who claimed Sinatra had changed their lives financially. without ever asking for recognition. One famous example involved fellow entertainer Sammy Davis, Jr. During periods when Davis faced financial difficulties, Sinatra reportedly stepped in more than once to help his longtime friend get back on his feet. Members of the Rat Pack often argued, sometimes bitterly, but when one of them truly needed help, Sinatra was usually the first to reach into his own pocket. Still, not everyone viewed him as generous. Many people who worked for Sinatra described him as intimidating and demanding. Employees knew that even the smallest mistake could provoke a harsh reaction. Musicians occasionally spoke about rehearsals where Sinatra would abruptly stop a performance if something sounded wrong, openly criticizing anyone he believed wasn't meeting his standards. To some, he was a perfectionist who demanded excellence. To others, he was simply impossible to please. That demanding personality extended to nearly every part of his career. Sinatra insisted on controlling everything from the arrangements of his songs to the lighting on stage, the order of performances, and even the seating of guests at private events. He believed every detail mattered, and he rarely accepted anyone else's opinion over his own. As the decades passed, Sinatra remained one of the biggest names in entertainment, but age slowly began catching up with him. By the late 1980s and early 1990s, health problems became increasingly difficult to ignore. He battled high blood pressure, suffered bouts of pneumonia, and experienced heart-related complications that forced him to cancel performances. Even then, retirement was something he struggled to accept. Performing had defined nearly every year of his adult life, and stepping away from the stage felt almost impossible. Although his voice no longer possessed the effortless power of his younger years, audiences continued filling theaters simply for the chance to see a living legend perform one more time. For many fans, the applause wasn't just for the songs. It was for a career that had shaped American popular culture for more than half a century. But behind the standing ovations, Sinatra's body was beginning to fail, and the final chapter of one of entertainment's most extraordinary and controversial lives was drawing closer. Eventually, Frank Sinatra gave Mia Farrow an ultimatum. He arranged a small role for her in his latest film so she could balance both projects, hoping she would leave Rosemary's Baby behind. But the production ran behind schedule, and Farrow refused to walk away from the role that she believed could define her career. Sinatra saw her decision as choosing Hollywood over their marriage. Rather than continue arguing, he made a decision that stunned the industry. He filed for divorce while she was still filming, ending their relationship in one of the most public breakups of the 1960s. Years later, Sinatra married Barbara Marx, the woman who would become his fourth and final wife. On the surface, their marriage appeared to bring him the stability that had been missing from his previous relationships. But according to those close to the couple, life with Frank could still be unpredictable. Friends described a relationship that often felt like Jekyll and Hyde. One day, he would shower Barbara with expensive jewelry, flowers, handwritten love notes, and lavish gifts. The next, he could explode in anger, shouting, making threats, or withdrawing completely. Despite the emotional highs and lows, Barbara stayed by his side, and the two remained married for the rest of Sinatra's life. Behind the fame, wealth, and worldwide admiration, Sinatra also fought battles that few people fully understood. For much of his adult life, he reportedly struggled with severe depression. Friends often described periods when he became withdrawn, hopeless, and emotionally exhausted. Some biographers have even suggested he may have suffered from bipolar disorder, although no definitive diagnosis was ever made public. During his darkest moments, Sinatra allegedly attempted to take his own life more than once. In one incident, he reportedly turned on the gas in his home and placed his head inside an oven. In another, he allegedly held a gun to himself. According to one well-known story, actress Ava Gardner rushed to stop him, wrestling for control of the weapon until it discharged. Fortunately, neither of them was struck by the bullet. These deeply personal struggles painted a very different picture from the confident entertainer millions saw under the spotlight. The man who appeared fearless on stage often battled overwhelming emotional pain behind closed doors. Then, in 1963, tragedy struck the Sinatra family in a completely different way. Frank Sinatra Jr. had begun following in his father's footsteps, building a promising career as a singer. At just 19 years old, he was performing at Lake Tahoe when his life suddenly changed. While relaxing in his dressing room with a friend, someone knocked on the door claiming to have a delivery. The moment Frank Jr. opened it, armed kidnappers forced their way inside. He was tied up, blindfolded, and pushed into a waiting car while his friend managed to escape and immediately alert authorities. The kidnappers, Barry Keenan, Joe Amsler, and John Irwin, demanded a ransom of $240,000 from Frank Sinatra. Working closely with the FBI, Sinatra agreed to pay the money in hopes of bringing his son home safely. After collecting the ransom, one of the kidnappers, John Irwin, began to panic about the enormous police response. Fearing the consequences, he released Frank Jr. unharmed. The FBI quickly tracked down all three men and recovered much of the ransom money. During the trial, the kidnappers attempted an extraordinary defense, claiming the entire kidnapping had actually been planned by Frank Sinatra Jr. himself as a publicity stunt to boost his music career. Investigators found no evidence supporting that claim. Instead, the overwhelming evidence pointed to a genuine kidnapping, and all three men were convicted. As the years passed, Sinatra's health steadily declined. The unstoppable performer who had dominated concert halls and recording studios for more than half a century began battling one illness after another. He suffered from heart disease, breathing problems, repeated bouts of pneumonia, bladder cancer, and eventually dementia. Public appearances became increasingly rare as his condition worsened. On May 14, 1998, Frank Sinatra passed away at the age of 82. At his bedside were his wife Barbara and his three children, saying goodbye to the man who had become one of the most influential entertainers in modern history. According to those present, his final words were simply, "I'm losing." Even in death, Sinatra's burial reflected the personality that had made him unforgettable. He was laid to rest with a pack of Camel cigarettes, a bottle of Jack Daniel's whiskey, a lighter, and a roll of dimes, items connected to the habits and superstitions that had accompanied him throughout his life. So how should Frank Sinatra ultimately be remembered? Was he one of the greatest singers to ever step onto a stage, a musical genius whose voice defined an era? Or was he a deeply flawed man whose explosive temper, controversial friendships, and troubled private life complicate his extraordinary legacy? Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between. Frank Sinatra was neither a perfect hero nor a simple villain. He was a man of remarkable talent, enormous generosity, fierce loyalty, painful contradictions, and very human imperfections. Decades after his death, people still debate not only the music he left behind, but also the complicated life he lived away from the microphone. And maybe that's exactly why his story continues to fascinate generation after generation. What do you think? Did Frank Sinatra's incredible achievements outweigh the darker chapters of his life? Or do those controversies change the way you view his legacy? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another story about Hollywood's biggest legends. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.